Absolutely, and I've always been a firm believer in house rules, and what I did is provide in the rule book some basic house rules so you can craft the game for the group that you're playing with. On the average, if when you're playing this game, you have about a 30% chance of victory. Very experienced players who work well together and cooperate well together can lift that to about 50%. But this game will always push back, and even experienced gamers who have played this game quite a bit will have a challenge with it. So, but what I found is most gamers want a challenge. So and if they start winning too much, they'll probably activate some of the rules to make it tougher. And not a problem, right?
Yeah, no, not a problem for me. Yeah, because I've only played it like twice. So, but yeah, there's only one more thing visually that people might be seeing here that we haven't referenced yet, and that's these little treasure things. It took us forever our first game to figure out what those are. What is that reference?
Okay, the treasure chests initially are only used by the rogue. So in the initial game, if you check the rogue's card, there's a thievery skill, and it tells her, because even though she's out for the good of the realm, she can't help herself. When she gets in a city where there's any treasure, she has to steal it. So if she ends her turn on a treasure chest location, she gets extra hero cards because of that. She'll steal those. But there will be more characters in the future, and more quests, more type of what we're going to call global effects that take effect, as well as more characters that will be using the treasure chest in the future. But in the initial game, you're correct, and we didn't really mention it in the rules because really it only affects that one character, and if you weren't playing that character, you didn't see it early on.
Right. And so this is the base game. Comes with pretty much everything you see here. Doesn't include these 3 dragons over here. Why don't you tell us what those are doing here?
Nice segue.
Yeah, way to work into that. Actually, the first expansion to Defenders of the Realm is going to be entitled the Dragon Expansion. And basically, the Dragon Expansion is going to introduce a lot of really neat stuff. First of all, for those of you that are Arkham Horror fans, it's going to introduce something that's similar to the Herald in Arkham Horror, where you can use one of these dragons as not a 5th general, but somebody who comes on and harasses the players to make it a little bit tougher if you want to do it that way. Or you can use them as new generals. And what it does is it replaces the standard generals that come in the game. And so that when you look on your board, you're going to see 4 new generals, and all of them are dragons. And they are going to have 4 different new minions, and even Sapphire has a alternate dragon that you use, which gives her a different combat skill. She becomes the Dragon High Master, which basically means she gets extra hit points for every dragon that's on the board.
She's going to kill her last.
Yeah, you would like to, unless she does this right off the bat, So you hope you can go after her last, but they're all very interesting. The green dragon and the black dragon, when they're used as generals, will move on their path toward the city just like normal, but the red dragon doesn't do that. The red dragon is bound and determined to put the entire realm in flames. So each time the red dragon's activated, he's given a location, and he immediately moves to that location. I didn't get a flame marker out, and then he flames the location. We put a flame marker on it. So he'll start flaming the various locations. Now, flame markers have effects. It allows the other minions there to taint the land faster. But the worst thing about flame markers is that a flame marker, when he gets 10 of them on the board, the next location he jumps to is Monarch City. So, but you have a chance, of course, putting out his flames. But he's got fire elementals who are also going around spreading flames. So while you don't have the tainting problems of the demons, you're going to see a lot more activity in terms of flames and the effects of flames on the board. They should be right in here. I thought they should be in here somewhere. But
we got the blessings.
Okay, they must be in there.
Well, you'll have to visualize that at home. Visualize a flame. There you go.
Yeah, there'll be a circle of flames kind of like this, but they look very.
About that size.
Yeah, they'll be that size. They'll be yellow and they'll be on the board. And so the black dragon is a strong dragon. It's going to have actually a cultist type follower that's berserk combaters, and they're going to have new special skills that essentially, in between each round of combat, if you attack the black guys here and you're not in the air, if you don't kill them, they do 1 wound to you regardless of how many are left. So they will constantly wound you each round of combat. So what you need against them, somebody like the paladin who has armor, because the 1 wound's just chucked off. But if the barbarian were to go after him, that could be a lot of wounds that mount up.
We had a lot of fun. One thing I wanted to mention about Brimstone, Richard hasn't touched upon it as much, but he's just so much fun to work with, and people who follow his posts and whatnot have seen it, is that there's really a reason thematically for everything he does. And so in the case of Brimstone, who's flying around, he actually stays away from the water. So he does, because he's more flame-based, and that's what he's trying to do, so he's kind of focusing on areas that are woods. In some cases, he goes into an area that's black. So thematically, it was all tying together as to locations he was moving to. It's a lot of fun, I think, with this game, in that when you ask Richard questions, it always ties back to the story. And so as we move into the Dragon expansion, actually we were including a 10-page story about the Black Dragon. And so by choosing Larry's artwork, I think it allowed us to, when I think of Larry Elmore's artwork, I do think of a world associated with that. But Richard clearly had already done that work ahead of time in his design, so I think it's come together really well, and it's laying the foundation for us to be able to continue. It's a robust design that as we move into the Dragon expansion, Richard's going to talk about the heroes that are on the way, additional factions that will come in other locations. I'm excited about just the long-term prospects of what we're going to do with Defenders because of the work that Richard and Larry's work has complemented that Richard has done.
That's great. Yeah, certainly for people that really enjoy it, like me, we're looking forward to that. And as we know from Arkham Horror, Richard is not afraid of expansions. So, are you planning on doing different size expansions like Arkham Horror? Like Dragon one sounds like it'll be pretty big.
Yes, and what we did, because with the Railways of the World series, that's kind of I don't know if I want to say pigeonholed, but those maps we go for the 4-panel footprint, etc. They're pretty standard type expansions we work with there. So when we started working with Richard, I asked him, what's your experience? What works well for you? What strategy too? And that's exactly what he suggested. Is you do have big and small expansions. For example, yes, the Dragon expansion will be a large expansion. The heroes will be broken into smaller groups. Well, our current plan, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, is to have 12 heroes developed, and like I said, our current plan is to have those released in 3 sets of 4, so that you don't necessarily have to go full force on a large set of heroes. If there's a specific set more appealing to you, obviously a lower price point. So
I like that separation because it just, as you enjoy the game, if it's steady expansions, if it's like, hey, here's all this stuff all at once, then you're just like, oh, we play it, and then like we don't really try out everything. But if it comes out over time, then it's like, oh, I'll try these 4 new heroes, and then 6 months later, oh, I'll try these 4 new heroes, or whenever it comes out. So I really enjoy that as a player because it kind of feeds it to you a little bit at a time, and that keeps the experience fresh because you play many times with the base game, then you might pick up the Barbarian, you play with them a bunch, and then you pick up the Dragons and you start playing there a bunch too. She's giving me the just a few minutes left for this segment, so we're going to wrap up the expansions. Why don't you just talk real briefly about the heroes?
Okay, well, the heroes are really interesting right now. In fact, we're talking about 12 heroes total. And we're going to have to trim our way down to 12 because we have so many different neat ideas that we've been play testing that it's very interesting. But we're looking at assassin, we're looking at a thief, we're looking at a captain of the guard who's actually going to have troops. We're looking at an elf lord that's going to have some special abilities. We're looking at we're looking at a mariner who can sail from here to here as one action and has an armada that helps attack even when other players are attacking when he's in the location next to the sea. We've got a really neat dwarf engineer that sets traps in locations, and when minions appear there, the traps just go off and try to knock them out. But one of his favorite thing is that he has dwarf and elves, so if he spends his turn with other players, they can all drink and get hero cards. If it matches the space, they get drunk and lose an action on the next turn. But so there's just a lot of variety of characters that are coming down, getting a lot of feedback from the different play testers, so a lot of excitement. So we're looking at having the hero expansions. After that, we're looking at having another set of generals, the Dark Lord's generals, which will not be dragons, will be different types of minions and different types of generals that we're in the process of looking at. And then we'll do the first board expansion. Those of you that like Arkham Horror will recognize that I got to get a board expansion in someplace, and that'll bring about what I call the Troll Alliance. And in the Troll Alliance, it'll bring in the Troll lands, and the Trolls will start out neutral. And now you'll have to start using diplomacy to keep the trolls neutral because they're being pressured to join the Dark Lord's army. And if it tips that way, then Scar, the troll general, will start marching as a 5th general down toward the city. So it creates a whole new atmosphere. And then looking longer out, we even can see adding a pre-game in which I call the Heroes of Legend, where you'll actually build your heroes up before the war starts and then move on. So we've got a lot of ideas, and we got more ideas beyond that, but I think that's probably as far as I ought to talk about them at this point.
All right. Well, that's certainly lots to digest, lots to look at with Defenders of the Throne. It's a big game, big $85 game, but I think it's well worth it. You should check it out at your local stores now. So, Richard, thank you very much for joining us. Keith, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Thank you very much.